We will call the meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. Ms. McGee, can we get a roll call, please?
Ms. Christian?
Yes.
Mr. Globinger? Ms. Oliver?
Here.
Mr. Patel?
Here.
Dr. Bishop?
Here.
Ms. Unical?
Here.
Ms. Shu?
Here.
Great, we have quorum. The first agenda item on tonight's agenda is the consent agenda. Is there anything anyone would like to have removed from the consent agenda and move to new business? Seeing none, I will look for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Thanks, Barbara. Seconded by Maura. And Jennifer, can we get a roll call vote?
Ms. Christian?
Yes.
Ms. Oliver?
Yes.
Mr. Patel?
Yes.
Ms. Dr. Bishop?
Yes.
Ms. Unical?
Yes.
Ms. Shu?
Yes.
Moving on to public comment, I know that we have some family members here to support one of our staff members who's reporting tonight. Would any of you like to make public comment? No. Great. Thank you for being here. We're very excited. Yeah. Seeing no other members of the public, we will move on to staff reports.
I just have a couple things before I turn things over to our two presenters. I did want to remind everyone that we are going to be doing construction in the Civic Room at the end of the month. And so by the next board meeting, Kelly will be doing a lovely presentation on all of the new features to turn this into a hybrid Zoom room with the Civic Foundation grant. So look forward to, this will be the last meeting in here. I know.
You're as is.
Sorry, you're right. This is the last meeting with this exact configuration. That's more accurate. And then I also wanted to just thank Maura. I know we're still waiting for confirmation on.
I thought I did.
Oh, did you?
Oh, yes.
We're good?
I'm good.
Okay,
Yes, I'm
great.
all good.
So,
Sorry, I
and
thought I
Maura
sent it
is
over.
going to be participating as one of our board members in the District 28 focus group that they're doing for their strategic planning. So we were thrilled when they reached out. And thank you to everyone that volunteered. And so we have two presentations tonight, and we're going to start with Dan McQuinn, who is here and is our interim facilities manager. Dan, do you want to come? Probably the end of the table is probably easiest. And Dan is going to share a little bit about what he and Tom Speltz, who's the other interim facilities manager, have learned in their work and that we shared in the board packet this month. So Dan, welcome.
Thank you. I've been working here for about 3 months, and they brought me on as the interim facilities manager, Tom Speltz and I. And a few weeks ago, Kate and Ann asked me to put together the state of the library report. And what I kind of did is I started up on top and just kind of worked my way down and just put a few comments in using my 30 years of experience. And I put together a little report. Everyone's already seen the report. I won't read it line for line, but I'll just kind of go through and summarize. Overall, the condition is good. It seems like there's been some deferred maintenance, some stuff that's been overlooked last couple of years. But it's minor in nature. A lot of filters needed to be changed. Coils needed to be cleaned. And the coils needed to be cleaned because the filters were dirty. So it kind of was a chain reaction. So we kind of leveled things out and we got everything running how it should be for now as far as cooling is concerned. And we're excited to be kind of stepping into the heat season now. And I'm not anticipating anything serious, but we're certainly going to be monitoring that as we go. Up on the roof, we have the cooling tower, which is just a few years old, and that's in excellent shape. It's maintaining temperature and doing what it's supposed to do. The two primary fan units, S1 and S2, the filters were real bad in there. We changed the filters, cleaned the coils, and they're operating great. Can't wait to get the heat going in there and see how that goes. We're also going to have to winterize those, drain all the water out so nothing freezes. We're not going to let anything like that happen. In addition to that, we'll have to get all the unit heaters up there up and running to prevent that from happening. The multi-stack chillers, they're relatively new. We had a couple of speed bumps with that, and we were able to get those running right now. We have some plans for winter shutdown. We're gonna clean out the strainers, clean out the condenser pumps, and we should be okay with that. There's a couple of safeties that we need to look at, and but that's kind of all covered by thermo systems, and we're gonna get a lot of that work done over the winter, and we should be in good shape next spring. Hot water boilers. I think they're original to the building, and it's kind of unique here. There's been the original building and two additions over the years, and kind of every time something's added on, they add a few more mechanicals, and they tie everything into the old building automation system, which is going to be hopefully upgraded next year. The plans are in the works for that, which is great, and it'll help integrate all those, make them more efficient, easier to operate. Because right now it's the old system's doing the best it can with what it has. But the boilers they're great. The good thing about them, their parts are easily available. They're easy to maintain, easy to fix, and they're all running great. So I'm happy for that. We do have a steam boiler that we've had some issues with. We corrected a huge problem. There was a pump, and the pump and the motor were shot. We had to replace them. So we rebuilt the pump, and we got a new motor in it. It's running great. We just have to get it online. And that, what the boiler does, it provides humidification on the dry winter months. And you need that with the books and everything. So we're going to have that up and running shortly. I touched on the building automation system. Again, that's going to be upgraded, and I really think that's going to be very beneficial. Moving down, the VAVs and reheats. Those are the fan power boxes that control air distribution in the building. Some of them are older, some of them are newer, but they're all working okay. We've had to make some tweaks on a couple, but I don't think we're going to have to do anything serious with those. The fire panel is new, and that's great. That's up and running. It's been tested, and everything's working with that. Fire pump is generally in the same condition. It's an older pump. We test it monthly. It's tested annually, and it's doing what it's supposed to do. Emergency generator. I'm happy to report we got a contract with Lionheart, and they're going to start servicing that, testing it, which is a kind of a huge load off of the staff here. They were just out last week. This week they were out Tuesday. Were they out Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Yeah, and everything looks good with it. It's tested, so I'm so glad to stay on top of that. Life safety stuff like that. Your fire pump, your fire panel, your emergency generator. You want to stay on top of that. No shortcuts there, right? Plumbing. We had a little emergency last week with the water.
Oh.
Yeah.
With
Tom was fixing a urinal, and it started spraying water, and we had to find a shutoff. But they got it. A little excitement, you know. keep the day going, right? And but you know, short of that, again, these fixtures, these old Sloan fixtures, their parts are available. They're easy to fix, cheap to fix. You know, I don't think we have to look into anything. No further actions required there. Lighting, some of the first generation LED lighting we have. I have one in the auditorium restroom. The drivers burn out on them, and you can't get the drivers to match that fixture anymore. So I'm thinking the next year or two, we might start some more of these fixtures burning out. So we should probably budget accordingly to start, you know, replacing those. I think that's gonna, if they're all put in at the same time, they're gonna start burning out in the same window, you know. The water feature up in the front. Tom actually made a note that he thought them decorative glass pieces are showing signs of wear. They should be replaced or powder coated over the next few years. Again, that's something minor. We can always take those out. You're still going to have the effect, or if one of them goes bad, we can just take that one out. But it's just something to have in the back, you know, be thinking about. The roof. You know, I know I said I started on the top and worked my way down, but here I am. I'm down on the first floor and I'm going back to the roof. Again, it appears to be in good shape. I know there was a few minor leaks in a few places, but we have Olson Roofing coming out once a year, twice a year, and they do an inspection, and you know that's important to keep that up. They'll stay on top of it. Those guys can see something that you know the untrained eye won't see, and patch it and keep it going. And you know, next 5 to 10 years, maybe budget for replacing that. The facade, kind of the same way. Especially up on the roof, you can see in some spots where there's some rust starting. Again, nothing critical, but you know there should be a plan. I don't know if there is to maybe get that painted. Parking lots and stairs. I strongly recommend seal coating and striping the door. Hey, someone must have saw this before I got here, and but that looks great. And yeah, there's some
great too, I hear.
I love this smell.
yeah, there's some painting that needs to be done on some railings. We got the one to the employee lot, and we did some repairs on the top of the would it be the west lot, and we got to paint that. And hopefully before it gets too cold, we'll get that in this season still. Operation wise, the spice work ticket system they have here, I think it's great. Everyone knows how to use it. Everyone can see what's going on, and it seems to be working great. People aren't afraid to jump on and just, you know, put something. My chair's squeaking. This wheel's broke. It's great. Everyone's, I think, is comfortable using it. And what's lacking operational wise is like a setup PM program. It's kind of an older, antiquated. Okay, you know, let's go around and put oil in all the motors. Anything need grease. There's not a hard schedule, and that's something I'm thinking when the new manager comes on, that you know they would have to implement. And in that vein, what I think is needed here for the next director is somebody with more mechanical experience. When you think about what's here, there's 8 boilers, there's multiple pumps. This is just on the first floor, and then going back up to the roof, S1, S2. There's 6 or 7 pumps. There's a dehumidification. There's a humidification sprayers up there. There's a lot of moving parts, stuff that needs to be looked at daily to prolong the life and have it running efficiently. Motors, fan belts, shivs. And so it would certainly justify somebody at that level being here, kind of get their hands on it, set up a PM program, preventive maintenance program, and stay on top of it, and get a program that everyone can see. I currently work for ABM. It's like an outsourcing. They provide maintenance, janitorial. One of the benefits I like with it, they do a yearly audit. They come in, there's a checklist of things, and they make sure that everything that's supposed to be being done, taken care of, maintenance-wise, is done, and it's great. And they offer assistance. They're a great resource. If you're doing a paving job, hey, listen, we're gonna do our parking lot. And any ideas? You got any horror stories about someone, you know, that a job that went south? Or who's the best one to use? And it's an instant resource you can use. And I'm a chief engineer in a high rise in downtown Rosemont. I just started there, and just even getting started, they're there to help me. They set up the PM program. They give me anything I need, equipment I haven't seen before. Hey, how does this thing work? I'll be right there. I'll show you, and it's great. So I would strongly recommend outsourcing. There's training involved with it. The preventive maintenance program, collaboration. Like I said, they'll assist with any project you have, any changes, mechanical, and that would be my recommendation. And you'll get the collaboration, training, the preventive maintenance with outsourcing. That's not to say it can't be done. Someone who has a lot of experience could certainly handle it, but given the makeup here, and I will just add the staff here. I mean, when I came in, I was made to feel at home, and these guys are all working. They're doing the best they can. Anna and Kate have been, so helpful, and I think we're in good shape overall. And with the proper leadership going forward, I think we'll be great. And I'm gonna miss this place. I'm gonna miss everyone. But I've still got some time.
But not
left.
for a little bit.
Yeah.
More time.
We're good. So, thanks for having me here. If anyone had any questions about anything, I'm more than happy to answer them or get you any information you need.
I have a question on preventive maintenance. And when you talked about filters not being replaced and therefore coils being affected, how have we gone this long without something like that?
Well, that's what happens, right? When there's not a set
Right.
procedure, or if you think someone's taking care of it, well, of course they're changing the filters. Of course they're cleaning the coils. Well, how do you know they are? Wouldn't the yearly audit be nice and make sure that's getting done? And that's kind of what I'm leaning to, but a lot of the stuff is assumed. Well, of course, I see him walking around every day. He's got a grease gun in his hand. I assume he's greasing the bearings, the motors. He's taking amp readings on it, but maybe they're not. So that's what happens when you don't have a dialed in system to control that stuff. So that's a great question. And a few things I've seen here were surprising. These haven't been changed in a while, but who's supposed to be changing them? Well, director. He's supposed to be making this being done, following up, and they're all changed now. The coils are clean. I can show you pictures, but that's all I can say on that. And going forward, we're going to have to keep a tighter reins on that. But thank you for that question.
Thank you for that answer, because it's really being proactive instead of reactive,
Exactly.
and I think it makes
Nice,
a difference.
nicely stated.
Any other questions?
Can I just say something really quick? I just want to take a moment and thank both Tom and Dan. Their hard work and their insight has really made this time, given me peace of mind. And your expertise in assessing the systems as you've seen them has been really helpful. We appreciate all the recommendations that you've made for who we're going to hire in the future, and Kate and I are going to take them to heart, and we're going to do some additional research before we share our thoughts with the board and the staff. So thank you very much. I try to thank you every day. I really do appreciate you and Tom.
It's my pleasure, and I'm here for anything you guys need. And thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I have one more question. What is the timeline that we're talking about sort of moving forward?
Our goal was to try to have somebody here by the beginning of January.
Okay.
But that,
Expect to have a new payroll system?
yeah,
Right.
so that might we might have
Okay.
that might get pushed a little bit, but we're hoping for January.
Okay. So we're, or at least first quarter of the.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, I would definitely say
Okay.
first quarter.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been really helpful. Talking with Dan and Tom. Just I've worked in 6 different libraries, and just the level of knowledge that they bring to the table is very unique. It is not something that we typically see in libraries. It's often it's like, I know many libraries where it was like, hey, you've got a part-time handy person. And it just, I think, really highlights the need, especially in an aging building, to have someone with the understanding of the very many, often very complicated systems and the way that they interact and how to keep them up. I don't think it will come as a surprise to anyone that most librarians, library directors, finance people do not have a deep well of knowledge when it comes to building systems. And Anna's done an amazing job in her time as finance and operations to learn about building systems, but that is still not the same as bringing in someone who, so it's really highlighted for us just the wealth of knowledge out there that we have not been tapping into, but that we recognize is so critical to keep our beautiful and aging building operational and looking great and operating well. So, so we look forward to sharing more next month.
And Dan, I'll echo what they've said. I so appreciate the work you and Tom have done. And I told Kate that this report is like the gold standard of what I hope to see year to year in terms of keeping updated about the building. And I feel like I have a new fluency in the building and what's happening. And so I appreciate the care you've shown to the building and how great you've been during this sort of strange interim time for us.
Yeah. Well, it's my pleasure. And I'll stay around as long as you guys need me.
Okay, great.
Does your family now want to
We need to get the sign off from him. Is that okay? Okay.
Well, thank you for being here tonight.
Okay.
Thank you for
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank
nice
you.
evening.
You too.
You too. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Nice to meet everybody.
Thank you for coming.
And so up next, our second presentation, Becky was having a wonderful vacation last month, so we had moved this presentation to this month. You may recall the last time we talked about our EDI Pulse Survey, I did the presentation. I'm now happy to report that Becky has taken over that aspect of our EDI work with Lily Zhang and performed the Q2 Pulse Survey and is going to share the results with the board tonight.
Thank you, Kate, for that introduction. So as Kate mentioned, I am now the administrator of our Culture AMP is the survey platform account, and I did the Q2 survey, and I will do the remainder quarters of the year surveys. I'm working with Lily Zhang, our consultant, our EDI consultant, on analyzing, synthesizing the results. And this Q2 survey was administered back in June, so I know you've been waiting to hear the results, so I hope this presentation is worth your wait. In terms of how the survey was designed, so we administered it back in Q2 in June. It really was a follow-up to our Q1 survey that Kate presented to you on earlier in the year, and another follow-up to the 2023 EDI baseline survey that Lily Zhang worked with us on. In order to really have a consistent pool of data to analyze, we decided to have the survey of the Q2 mirror the Q1 survey. We didn't want to change the questions. We wanted to keep the format very similar so that we really had a really strong pool of data to compare against. And then finally, we collected quantitative data and demographic data. And by demographic data, I mean by department. So staff had the choice to self-select if they chose which department they belonged to in bigger groupings so that we could really further disaggregate that data and try to really pinpoint how different departments are experiencing their time here at the library. Okay. So we sent it to 114 staff members back in June. This number was a little higher because we had some summer reading aids. We also have substitutes that are included in that number. We had 79 staff complete the survey. That's a participation rate of 69%. But Kate helpfully reminds me that we have about 10% of our staff who are substitutes, who have very irregular shifts. They might be here one month and not the next. So really this number is quite statistically significant from other staff surveys that I've done. Of course, would we like it to be higher? Sure, but we're pleased that we've been consistently kind of at that rate. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I'll ask at the end. I'll just write it down. No, keep going.
Okay. Okay, and so what I want to highlight is, and this might be a little harder to read from left to right. If you start from the right column, there's 2023 EDI baseline, then it goes to Q1 to Q2. We compare from Q1 to Q2 and then from the baseline to the Q2. And you'll see in the nice happy orange circles, we are making progression across the majority of the questions. Some questions more than others, but we are pleased to see steady progression in our survey responses and to really note the progress that we've made. But that's in highlighting in particular some of the biggest improvements from the baseline survey are from workloads being fairly divided here and feeling respected and valued by library leadership. So I think a lot of effort has been done in these areas, and we continue to make strides. So we wanted to call out those two. But not to say that there isn't room for growth and improvement. There always is. So we had from the baseline to the Q1, we had a slight dip on the time and autonomy being respected by library leadership. We came back up to kind of close that gap we had from Q1, but we didn't quite close it all the way, so we're still slightly down on that question from the baseline survey in 23. And then the questions 6 and 7, those two at the bottom there, were the first time they were asked was in Q1, and so Q2 gives us an actual data point to compare against. So you'll see Q2, I have the capacity to complete my workload each week. That went down by 6 percentage points. It's not, from what I've talked with Lily, extremely significant when you have, less than 10% drop, but it's still worth pointing out that we had a bit of a drop there on staff from Q1 to Q2, feeling capacity to complete their workload each week. In the memo that was shared with the board, there was an appendix at the end that kind of explained some narrative that, we've had some staff turnover in some departments where they might have felt under-resourced. So we can't fully know, but we can maybe allude to some reasons for that score dropping. But in terms of next steps, yes, thank you.
I didn't mean to click it.
No,
And then
you're good. So the plan is to carry out the rest of the year with a Q3 pulse survey and a Q4 pulse survey. I will be administering those. I am the sole administrator of the account now, and Lily Zhang still has access. And leadership is very committed, and we've shared the results of this survey with our staff and our managers in particular. They also saw the breakdown of the data by department, because they're going to be key stakeholders in helping us work towards closing those gaps on staff perceptions of fairness of workload and barriers around staff capacity, because they might have more, really acute ideas of what we can do to really make staff feel supported and to make sure that we're very clear around workload division so no one is overburdened. So those are our most clear next steps, and I'm looking forward to sharing the progress we make on Q3 and Q4. But that's where we stand today. It's a short and sweet survey. It's really like 7 questions. So it gives you kind of just a snippet of where we're at in the organization, but I think the results overall are showing steady progression. But I'm open to any questions or any things you have, concerns.
Those are just numbers
They
to
are
me,
numbers.
and we're dealing with people. I don't see any indication of what made a difference, what activities, what kinds of communication, what kinds of evaluation or supervision or mentorship, what made a difference. It could be somebody having a bad day,
Yeah.
or somebody having a disagreement with a supervisor or whatever. So the numbers really, I don't care. I really would like to know what's working,
Yeah.
why it's working, and how it's working. Fine, the numbers, it shows
They're-
improvement. What improvement over what? So, go
That-
forth.
that is a fair point, and I think when we were taking the Q2, remembering the context of it being June, and I was a month
Of
in, and
course.
Kate wanted to transition to me. So I to your point, it is numbers. How do we tell that story? How do we really figure out what's going on? We want to hear from people. So we are, if I can preview it, getting that qualitative analysis in future surveys, because that's really important to me to really flesh out that narrative on how people are feeling, that they can feel safe to share feedback. And I communicate very strongly with our staff Culture Amp has many confidentiality protections in place so that even I as an administrator cannot pinpoint people down by which exact,
Right.
person they are. They're protected, so
And-
we want to build that
And
trust.
that
first
goes
and
along with
foremost.
professional development as well, because if something is working, everybody should know. And
Yeah.
how is that being communicated? That's like
Yeah.
mentoring and professional
Exactly.
development. So it's not a secret if one person is doing it really well and somebody could use some coaching.
Yeah.
That's that's one-on-one professional development sometimes. So
Agreed. Yeah.
I think one of the things
points.
that is beneficial to this type of survey where it is just numbers is that it's protecting the anonymity. So even though there's things built in, the more sort of descriptive and qualitative the responses you get, the easier it is to trace who it's from. I mean, in an organization this small with very like separate departments, you can always, it wouldn't be that hard if you were, I mean, not that you would be motivated to do that necessarily. So I think the benefit to this is that it does protect the anonymity and it does give you sort
And
of
there's a place for both.
Right.
But I think that this doesn't answer my questions of what worked.
Yeah.
That I think hence the name Pulse. As you said, Becky, I do a lot of staff surveying in my job, and you're right. You always want to know if things are going up or down, why. And I'm not sure what tool you're going to use, but the tool we use does do things like when you rated us this high or this low, how what factors play a role in your rating, and they're predetermined. They also help hide in. Keep things anonymous, and so you get a sense of what went into their rating, so it can be done and still protect anonymity, right? So
I also think this. Sorry, Kate. I think this is helpful, especially in the context of rebuilding trust with the staff who were hesitant to take surveys for a long time because they felt like they were being micromanaged or watched. And I think this, to me, feels like, to Maura's point, sort of scaffolding back up to a place where we can ask some of those more descriptive questions and build their confidence that we are seeing their feedback, we're talking about the feedback, and it's being used, so that we can get to a point where they feel like, okay, now I can, maybe this tool Janet talked about is a great resource, but I feel comfortable answering more in-depth, insightful questions.
I think, the point that Maura and Barbara were making, where that it's like, it's not one or the other, that like both pieces have value. And so, not to like give away any spoilers on the agenda building, which you guys already saw, but we're gonna have the quarterly strategic plan report next month. And one of the things is our EDI work. And so we have had managers sharing, like, what are the things we've been doing? What has been? Now, I don't think it is going to get into some of the granularity that I think you were talking about just now, Barbara, but I think it is going to pair really nicely with what we're seeing here with the Pulse survey, and it's going to give that insight into, here's where we're putting our efforts. Is this actually doing anything? And then if it is, great, like, let's continue doing that. If it isn't, then we need to get more curious and say, well, why isn't, if we're doing this, all this stuff, but nothing is changing, then we obviously haven't identified the root cause. And so a lot of times it's figuring out sometimes what that root cause is, which I know, I've spoken a lot with Lily, and now Becky meets with Lily. And so I think that we are all very committed to doing that. So I would love to, not to give you like pre-November board packet homework, but I would love to hear in November when we do the quarterly strategic plan report, because this will be the first one we're doing, is this giving the information that the board is interested in, or do we need to rethink how we're doing that? Because I think that that absolutely should be something we're using to help us see where these numbers are coming from, and also see, is where we're putting our time and energy having the impact that we're looking for, both with the staff and the community. So, pre-homework.
I have one last question about, when is the next survey being given?
Actually just gave it, and
Okay.
because we're a little behind on this one, but because we had to, like I said, we had to not do it last month because I moved it, and so
Can I? So I was just. Oh, so that's wonderful. But my thought was that we had so many. There have been a lot of
changes,
surprises on the past.
Surprises is a good way of putting it.
Unexpected events, and I think that we all have to keep in mind when we're looking at that when, like, depending on someone's what they've been working on, I'm sure workloads have been people's day to day have changed. So I think it will be a interesting survey to look at.
Like, maybe leadership shouldn't take the survey next time. Like, no, I think that.
And I don't know how much of that, gets distributed through the rest of the staff. Like, and it depends on the departments and stuff. So
right.
But just something.
Like this last one that Becky just reported on was administered the second week of summer reading. Okay. So like, that's also important to note, and that's why we've started adding that. Like, here's
kind of what was going on.
This is a snapshot, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I
That'll-
do think that it
That
does
has an
have.
impact. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
Okay. Do you think there's a correlation? You said that the scores were sort of going up to now we have an actual HR leader versus interim. Is that part of like the mindset potentially for the staff here to see that, okay, things are changing from that standpoint? So that's part of the bump up too, as opposed to just the survey and Lily?
It's a very good point.
Well,
Like when you're at a company, as you professionalize, you expect higher satisfaction, a new ERP, a new HR system, a new focus of attention that's sort of more dedicated,
yeah.
might give you the bump too.
Raised the importance level
Yeah.
of.
So congratulations, Becky.
But until I speak too soon, I think I'm gonna want to. I'm very data driven. I'm gonna want to see, for me, sustained.
Yeah.
Like I want to see my numbers sustained, and like how they might dip a little or grow, but for me, the proof is going to be in the pudding, right? I need to see this go through the full year, and when we do another big survey again,
Yeah.
we're going to really see where we're at. But thank you for those words. But I think that I really attribute the work to our managers, our people on the front of the line who are doing the work every day, and we're here just
Yeah.
analyzing the data. But our team are great, and changes have been made, and I think we'll be pleased that we have some qualitative data for the next time.
I do
Good
have,
job.
sorry, I have one more question. Just the question on the workload, the reduction, do we see it in some departments more so than others, or is it what? That seems like a very straightforward question. I just feel like we probably have the insight of,
It seems like it's straightforward, doesn't it?
it's not, like, I guess, like,
I don't know. It
if we
seems
just,
like
if we,
it's-
do we have data points? I guess I'm saying if you're saying we have data points by department, are some departments has on average, a more reduction than others, or is it more spread out?
I
So,
think there was a page in the report that did exactly
oh, I
that,
didn't see
yeah.
that.
Some have more acute feelings of
Okay.
capacity being really stressed or under-resourced than others, yeah. And some are consistently higher, and there's a host of factors that play into that, but yeah, where we're seeing consistently, you'll see some dips and some ebbs and flows on the department. Why it's so helpful.
Yeah.
And why we share it with our managers at that meeting.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Becky.
Moving into board member reports.
I just wanted to say that I thought the Upstanders event, which we partnered with the Community Commission and United Against Hate and the Illinois Holocaust Museum, right, and Catch, was an exceptional event. We had a nice crowd. People were very engaged. We had a fabulous panel and moderated. I enjoyed it, and it was, I think, of use to all the folks who came. I thought it was very nice, and the library had a great selection of books out there for people to pick up. And glad to be there. That's all.
It was really important information. Even it didn't have to be for it wasn't for parents only. And my husband found it so interesting, and he really took away a lot of things. So it was very well done.
Any other board member reports?
Just a general comment around the time of that event. Kudos to the staff for their dedication and a lot of hard work, and talked about workloads and stuff like that. It's a busy time of year, so kudos.
Went nicely into staff appreciation and just a few agenda items, so thanks for teeing that up. Okay, moving on to unfinished business. First up, we have an update on the FEIN and payroll change from Anna.
Well, Becky and I have been very busy this week since our last meeting last Wednesday. We have applied and received our FEIN number that will go into effect 1/1 of 25. Registration with the state of Illinois has been completed. We received the ADP contract this week, and it's currently under review by the attorney, and we should get it back tomorrow. We're planning a meeting with the ADP implementation team for the week of 10/27, and during that meeting, the comments that we've gathered from staff will be shared and hopefully can be addressed as they implement the system. And ADP has confirmed that the 1/1/25 go live date is achievable. So
That's
those
good
are
news.
our updates.
Thank you.
Any questions for
Any
Anna?
questions?
And how does I know that the village needs to manage the IMRF. Correct. How does that all mesh with a given employee's paycheck? Like, does,
Well, it'll be taken out and we'll just send the money
Okay.
to the village.
got it.
Any other questions?
Kind of a strange one maybe, but do you have the ability for the historical information of the previous payroll so that when people need to go and look at a
So,
W-2 from
What's
the
gonna happen
Are you
is,
referencing the new law that we get to comply with as of January 1st?
If I'm,
So
if I'm
staff
creating
will-
segues for everything, then
so staff will, because it's a different FEIN,
Yeah.
we will not be converting the information to ADP. But staff will still have access to the village system.
Okay.
And even when you're terminated, you have access to the village system. So they will have access to that to get all of their prior information. And then moving forward with the new FEIN, they will get that from ADP.
So it'll take 3 years. That's the new law is that we have to retain and make available for 3 years. So the village will have to retain those for 3 years. And then after that point, that would fall off and we would no longer need to have that.
Awesome.
Any other questions about FEIN or payroll? Okay, well, staying with Hannah, let's talk about the fiscal year 26 tax levy.
Okay, so in the packet, there's the memo, and all I'm going to say is we recommend approving a 4.6% increase for the 2024 tax levy for our fiscal year 26, which will help us cover compensation increases, insurance costs, and all of our strategic initiatives. This increase will ensure that we can continue providing quality services and support the community. Does anybody have any questions?
And I know we've offered this in the past, and I know we're, about to vote on this, but as always, Anna and or I, or both of us together, are always happy to meet one-on-one if you ever want to dive deeper and get more info on this. I know that this is a lot of information, and I know we give you a couple months to look at it, but also want to make sure that everyone knows that that offer is always on the table for this or any other topic, but I know the finance stuff can sometimes be a lot of information to parse through. So I want to make sure you guys have all the info you need.
Are there any questions about the proposal? Seeing none, I would love to have a motion to approve an overall tax levy increase of 4.6% for the fiscal year 26 tax levy in the amount of 10. Why are there numbers?
Because we have to.
Just
4.6.
there were so many words and then there were numbers.
I know.
$10,344,000.
So moved.
Thanks, Maura. Seconded by Jamie, and we will need a roll call vote.
Ms. Christian?
Yes.
Mr. Oliver, Ms. Oliver?
Yes.
Mr. Patel?
Yes.
Ms. Becker Bishop?
Yes.
Ms. Unical?
Yes,
Ms. Shu?
Yes.
Thank you.
I think you should go on vacation.
Until
You work
January
so hard.
Yeah.
Actually, Anna's off next week, so she will come back ready to charge forward. It's going to be fun.
Or January 2nd. Moving into new business.
So every year we we get to look at serving our public, which are the Illinois Public Library standards for libraries, as part of our per capita grant application. The board will see the per capita grant application next month. So you had a very big packet this month because that included all of the chapters along with a memo from me and a checklist about where we're at. I'm happy to, the last couple of years since they updated the standards, I've had to say there's a couple things that we have not done. And one of those, two of those we've now completed. One is to have a security camera policy, and the other is to have a executive director succession plan. So we have completed two. There are still a couple things that we know are not done. Like there are certain facility things that we know we need to upgrade, but we, as we all know, have a plan for that and are going to be working on that in coming years. And then there are a few things that we have made a conscious choice, like doing a podcast, having a library billboard, that we have chosen not to do as something that we do not feel that we, at this particular library, need to do. But I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has on any of the chapters or anything from my memo or the checklist.
I think we talked about when you were developing the strategic plan, that it's a living, breathing document.
Yes.
And it has to be reflective of the situation, the time, the circumstances, and I'm really proud of you for not trying to do everything. Because that's not something that you normally would do. So I think prioritizing and recognizing that it's not a failure, it's a reality.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
I will continue to try to not do everything. It is really hard because
That's who you are.
yeah. So, but thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and I will say that the Illinois Library Association is working on updating the standards. So next spring, those will be released, and I'll share those not only when they're released, but then of course next fall when we review them. And they're supposedly going to be doing a quite an extensive revamp. I haven't seen a draft yet, but it should be
Here was
interesting.
I just saying, look at this, we've really whittled it down to, you know.
Billboard and
A
Billboard
billboard, a
and
podcast,
yeah.
on that.
I'm pretty sure we're still going to be very much meeting all of the standards. My co-author, Kathy Parker, is on the committee and has been recommending Baby's checklists from our book. So I think we're going to be in great shape with those standards as well.
Great.
Any other questions or feedback about the serving our public? Okay. Up next is the Class 6B application review for 3685 Woodhead Drive.
Yeah, so I know it's been a little bit over a year since we've had a Class 6B, so just as a reminder, this is not something that our board approves, or even the village board. It actually is the county board. But what happens is the application must first be filed with the village of Northbrook, who then makes a recommendation to Cook County on whether to approve it or not. They give all of the units of local government an opportunity to weigh in. The reason is that it does impact our, the taxes we get. So about 40% of our overall taxes come from commercial and industrial tax revenues. This property has been vacant for 2 years and is a commercial property. Previously, Jay and I served on a village commission that would kind of go over these. That commission has been disbanded, so we don't have that, but in looking through the documentation from the paperwork, and I did a quick, email to the village, and they were like, yeah, we don't see any issues with it. However, it is up to our board to say whether or not they feel that this would be, there was one time when we did decide that it didn't feel like it was a good idea to recommend. But typically what we have done is said that the library board recommends to the village that they approve it, that they don't see any issues with it, that because the property has been vacant or whatever it is. So, there's a lot of information in the packet. I will be honest and say that I do not have a full, comprehension of everything, but I didn't see any huge red flags in looking at it, and I'm happy to try and answer whatever questions I may about it.
I'm going to confess, I also did perhaps not scrutinize. But I did notice the property had been vacant for 2 years, and it's always nice when you can, even if it is commercial.
Mentioned something about 40%.
So As for us, we receive the majority, about 93% of our revenue, our operating revenue comes from property taxes. So of that, 40% of that revenue is from commercial, industrial, retail. The other 60% is the residential piece. So having a strong business district that has, that is a strong tax base is really, really important. The Village of Northbrook has typically had a pretty low unoccupancy rate, typically under 9%. Cook County, now granted, we're at the very tip of Cook County. Cook County typically usually has double digit, usually like 15 to, I'd say 18%. This is not my area of expertise. I think you guys all know that. So obviously by giving a tax break, that will mean that there is a reduction in the amount that we might be able to receive hypothetically. Realistically, because it's a home rule community, that isn't so much of an impact. And because the library, I'm throwing around a lot of percentages, I feel like I should have done a PowerPoint. The library typically only accounts for about 4% of a person's property tax bill. The amount that this would potentially impact us is pretty small. It also isn't going to have an impact on having it, like sometimes it's like, oh yeah, and we know that it's a school, and so there's gonna be kids sent here, and they're gonna be using, the impact for us in terms of materials and services is negligible to non-existent.
I don't remember how many employees they were considering, but
21 currently employs 21 full-time and 3 part-time employees.
and that's always a good thing too.
Projects to be
100%.
25 full-time employees.
Yeah.
And just like any other business, they would be able to get a business library card, which is great.
LLC.
Yeah, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Sounds like a cool business.
Any other questions or discussion?
Strong feelings for or against?
I will note that we do not have to make a recommendation. I think we talked about that. So we can choose to not make a motion this evening and just let the village do what they're going to do, or we can make a motion to recommend or not recommend to the village board that the 3685 Woodhead Drive Class 6B request be approved.
Do we look negligent if we don't, or does our opinion matter at all?
That is an excellent question.
I don't know that I can answer the question about whether or not our opinion matters. That would be something that you would have to
Going to closed
inquire
session.
of the village board. However, I do think that we are a taxing body, and I think that from my perspective, it is always helpful, even if it doesn't have an impact, to weigh in and remind people that our voice is one that they should be asking for, and that we will respond, even if it isn't a big.
I agree.
I would agree with that.
Did Jay pass on any strong opinions by chance?
No,
Because
he
I
said-
don't know. Just he would have an eye that
he
we
would,
don't.
He would. I did have a chance to talk to Jay yesterday, and he said, "Oh yeah, I looked at that a little. Yeah, it looks fine."
Okay.
That was what I got.
Okay.
So I think that he has certainly, if he saw things that were of concern, and then we both talked about how much we missed the EDC and how helpful it was.
Okay.
It's like, okay, but he did not
Okay.
voice
That's
any
good to know.
concerns
Yeah,
and
thank
didn't
you.
seem-
I would be in favor of approving it, but it's not something, if the board was sort of feeling more lukewarm, I could go along with that as well.
I'd be.
I agree.
So can I get a motion to recommend to the village board that the 3685 Woodhead Drive Class 6B request be approved?
So moved.
Thanks, Janet.
Second.
Seconded by Maura. And this one is a voice vote, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Great, motion passes.
Great, and now I send a letterhead to the village, and then they include it in the packet with the other units of local government and their letters for the next, when they talk about it. which I believe is in 2 weeks.
Everyone. Next up is our discussion about Staff Appreciation Week, which is coming up soon.
So I asked Anna to just look at kind of like remind us what we've done in the past and how much, what was spent by the board. Did we spend library money? And then Becky wrote a really lovely memo kind of sharing. She's had a number of discussions, small group discussions with staff over her 6 months here now, and had some suggestions as well. But of course, as always, it is up, it is the board's decision kind of what, so we always like to try and offer some suggestions. So do you have numbers?
Yeah, I do.
Oh yeah.
I don't know when you had time to
Fiscal
put
year
those together,
24,
but
we
let's
did the Great Graders Sunday Idea, and that was paid for by the library, and the cost was $765. In fiscal year 23, each board member picked a day, and they brought in treats on their own. That was paid for by the board member. That was not paid for by library. And then in fiscal year 22, we did Dairy Queen Blizzards. That was also paid for by board members, and that was $408. And then COVID, but then prior to COVID, it was the board just picked a day and
Yeah.
they would bring whatever they wanted.
Do you have any feedback as to
Yeah, which one
how
did they
it
like?
received?
Staff love food, so I don't think.
Do you think that picking a board member to take a day is better, or is doing like a one-time thing better?
I did hear good feedback about the graders, mainly because it's yummy, and also because it was just kind of there and you could go on your own time and get it when you had a moment, as opposed to the one time the muffins arrive and then
Right.
That's true.
I don't.
Is it boring if we do the graders thing twice in a row? I mean,
Well, I think the good news is that if we do that and staff do not like that anymore, we're gonna know and it will be very clear for next year. Cause like they'll tell us it's great, right? Like, yeah.
I
I mean,
think it's a bad idea.
I also think, I know Becky, you had a lot of small group and, I know that, not graders didn't come up, but,
Right. Because I asked about how they like to be. Because here at the library, there's many ways that we can acknowledge one another, reward one another, give shout outs, to people directly or to their manager, and it can go into into their folder. And I asked how they like when their manager gives them feedback or gives them praise, and the feedback that I got consistently was it's the little touches. I always like to say the love is in the details. So anyway, it's hard with 114 people. I'm not suggesting that each person gets a personalized something, but if there's any way you can put your stamp on it, people really like that kind of handwritten touch, or I saw any kind of personalization you can add that kind of says that you kind of put your stamp on it.
I liked the idea of the handwritten notes. To your point, I don't think Jill's could write 114. But I did wonder if we each wrote something, and it was next to the freezer and the graders, on on a bulletin board or on a stand-up.
Yeah.
And people could just come and.
I'm not comfortable. I don't know these people
Personally.
individually
Oh.
Right.
or personally. I would feel inauthentic. I'm happy to do something in general because I view it as the staff. Individually, I don't know them, and it would feel
Right. Or I guess,
artificial.
or I guess what I mean, I should have rephrased and said maybe about what the library means to you, or how their work impacts you or your friends, your community, and
what we love about the library.
yeah. So not about them as a
Other than each
individual, but if they feel that they're having an impact in a very particular, close kind of way on someone.
We did those.
the videos last year.
Oh, nice.
We did
Yeah.
videos.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
that
I
kind of
know-
stuff is really
and I think that was,
Yeah.
I think that was really appreciated
Mhm.
by staff as well. And so maybe it's videos, or maybe it is something similar, but handwritten where people can read it. I think that, most people get into library work because they want to make a difference, right? It's like working in education. It's not because they want to become millionaires, which is good news. And I think that it's always like I had a patron last week, 2 weeks ago, who called me up and she said, "Oh, I can't believe I got a hold of you, and I need to tell you something about your staff." And I'm like, "Oh God, is this in person?" Like you don't know. She's like, I wrote the list, I wrote the names down. I'm like, "Oh God, okay." And she's like, "They were all so wonderful. I made sure I copied down all of their names so I could tell you, and I want to tell you about each one individually." And so then I took all of that, I thanked her, I shared it with all of the staff members. That I heard back from almost everyone that she listed, and like that little, and it took her, I was on the phone with her for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. So I think talking about the ways that the library impacts you and your family is really powerful, even if you're not talking about a specific person, because we know that everything that people come and use the library for only happens because of the staff. And that, I think, would be,
One of the things that, when I was a principal, we had something called a smilegram. And it was used from staff member to staff member, for teachers to students, for parents, back to teachers. And I still have my pack of smilegrams. But if somebody
were they
like...
actually smiley faces?
No, they were little goldenrod things with a drum major on it.
Aww.
And everybody knew their goldenrod little half slip. And maybe that lady could have a piece of paper right then and there to thank those people on a little piece of paper, and then it's
and give it directly to because we have shout outs, which we use internally for staff to staff appreciation, and
That's a neat idea that if we have something else so that patrons can leave a note for their.
Kind of reminds me of like the Daisy Awards in hospitals, where you can recognize a nurse who's made a difference.
Oh.
Most of our schools have shout out programs where staff can recognize each other, and on a district level, we have staff nominate each other for extra mile awards, we call them.
And one of the things that was first and foremost with the whole process was you had to look for something good. Find something to write so that every child gets one of these little goldenrods. Make sure that every teacher, at some point, it's not canned, but it made everybody aware of catching people doing good things and acknowledging it.
And it shifts the mindset
Absolutely.
away from looking for like the whatever. I'm trying to think of a mistake I made today.
I think handwritten notes or notes, obviously not to individuals, but sort of general about the contribution we feel the staff makes to the success of this library, and they could be in the staff lounge or something where people could read them as they're eating there. Yes.
So handwritten notes. Sounds like video is still on the table too.
No, I did not like
no.
doing it. I hated how I looked in the video. I'm sorry, I'm now videoing again.
I agree.
I like video.
Skill sets will go on.
Namish can
He can represent
one person, yes. I do not want to do it again. Sorry.
No.
I will make a handmade card. I will decoupage. I will get out my paints.
There's more I will do to not be recorded. I have no idea.
I just had a thought about the smiley face idea. So the Arts Commission, we're housing these panels for the Arts Commission that we use for displays on the second floor. But there are some extra panels. And we could put those up on the second floor and have this be something, as long as there's not a display that needs to happen, people could hang the smiley faces up there and have a little table and just have it up all the time.
That's great.
Yeah,
I was
that's a
gonna,
great
I
idea.
don't think 7 notes is gonna fill all those.
Really big smiley faces.
It depends on how much art Maura is willing to do.
That's true.
Well, we
Gets
can
me out of
start
a video
with one
a
or
lot.
two, and then if it gets really big, then we can keep adding to it. But then patrons would see it, and staff would see it, and
I mean, you put it in the children's section and you could have all sorts of really sweet
Oh,
messages.
right? I don't know if you guys saw, this was a few months ago, there was a little girl that made a book about how much she made a little book while at the library about how much she loved the library.
There was a comment recently, it must have been on Facebook, and a little girl walked into the library and exuberantly threw out her arms and said, "I'm back."
And we missed you while you were here. So I'm hearing graders and handwritten notes with possibly some decoupage tossed in. I don't actually know what decoupage is, but I feel like it involves glue.
Mod Podge, usually.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Cannot promise to decoupage, but I can do a handwritten note, so
Okay.
you do that part. Collage, I'll do.
And when are we thinking? We usually do it in November, but we can choose whenever we like.
Whatever sounds good.
Sounds fine.
Yeah.
Time to
Before
be
we get
thankful.
into the craziness,
So just
Dusty.
as a reminder, this is something that Anna coordinated last year.
No, Barbara
I did.
really did it. All I did, Barbara did it, and we worked together, but
sorry.
she did
Okay.
The
all
greater
the
thing,
work.
yeah.
I just kind of cut the check and then was the contact.
And Graders was wonderful to work with.
Yeah.
So would
No, thank you.
someone else be willing? Because I think with everything that Anna has going on, I think of course we can cut the check.
Well, shouldn't Becky do it?
And oh yeah,
Notice that pass off, right?
It's all again.
So we're talking graders in November with Becky coordinating with graders and each of the board members writing up a note that we will put in the staff lounge and also look at sharing.
Are we
Tell us
making
the
like
deadline.
poster board size notes so that it's visible, or like?
I think if you
Stationary
each
size notes?
write a note, we can
Blow 'em up.
scan and blow
Oh,
them up.
and-
Not poster.
And I can get
You do not need, I mean, if you want to make it poster board
Well,
size.
now I want to do crafts because Laura has inspired me.
My penmanship isn't very good, so.
You are welcome to type it and sign if you want.
There we go.
It wasn't the blizzard.
You can cut out letters from magazines and do it that way.
I mean, maybe don't do that though,
I'll go
because
to
then
the
it
kids'
looks like you're
area.
like kidnapping
Yeah,
somebody.
right.
No, no.
Right?
It's all
Right.
They just got, they get this
Yeah.
caramel chocolate strawberry.
Okay,
and
that's
that's-
Last year we had a couple of board members there when we did
No,
this,
didn't
so.
I think that sounds lovely.
Okay.
So Becky and Jennifer will coordinate when
Let us know.
to do it with when board members are about.
And Becky, I think Anna has the receipt.
Yeah, no, I have it all.
Because there were some non-dairy, there
Oh,
was,
great.
Yeah, I
so,
Yeah, I'm glad you saw.
We covered all of the different
Covered.
dietary restrictions.
definitely.
Very good.
Yeah.
And Janet and I learned on Sunday that some of the, ironically on Sunday, that some of the toppings made their way to staff members' homes because there were
There's
so
so-
many left. And that made me very happy.
Oh.
Lifetime supply of maraschino cherry.
I love
For all your Shirley Temple
I
days.
wish I had known. I would have taken 3 instead of just 1. I didn't want to be greedy.
Sounds like there were plenty to go around.
Oh man, missed opportunity. Okay, great.
Anything else about staff appreciation?
Can we go over the date again so I know when the,
We have not chosen
Oh, okay.
one. It will be
Sorry.
in November.
okay, you'll let us
then
know?
Yes.
Okay.
Mainly, what's the deadline for the notes? That's what we need to do.
Yeah.
So somebody will tell us.
So we will let you know next week.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Annual library visit.
The last couple of years we've been doing spring. So I have it because I have my checklist of when different things happen at the board meetings. You guys have all seen this. It's exciting. I am suggesting that we just shift consistently to spring for the annual library visit, unless that is an issue. And I would also though like to choose now and then not think about it until we're closer to spring, and then we'll work on getting a date.
Perfect.
Does that work for everybody?
Perfect, and I think spring is preferable. You don't know what's gonna happen in the middle of the winter.
Yeah.
I
Correct.
mean,
Nothing good.
saying let's all go to Schaumburg and then use a plate. So,
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay, great. So, and then how does Schaumburg sound?
Great.
Fine.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, great. I think you guys will really like it. Although I did give Dan, one of our architects, a hard time when I was there for the grand opening, because I was like, "That's beautiful. How are they going to dust it?" I was like, "I don't worry about
big
that."
I go there a lot actually because I work there, so I've popped in there. So.
Have you seen the new space? Look up
Yeah,
and
that's
ask
amazing.
yourself.
Sonamesh has already seen it.
That's okay, but he doesn't know. He
Isn't
hasn't
it
seen
the
all the
tour?
backstory.
That's right.
And he hasn't thought about how are they dusting.
I got the tour of the roof when I got my orientation here. So.
Okay, that is very triggering for Steve.
Sorry. Now
It was hard enough when Dan started talking about the roof. I thought I was gonna get through one. Fine, someday. Okay, great. Moving on to the Jaffe Security Proposal Review.
All right, so we're gonna slide the barcode over to Patrick so that Jaffe can join us. And while he's getting that set up, I will just do an overview. So we have seen an increase in security and safety issues in the library. We've definitely been experiencing challenging patron behavior since 2021, hoping every year that this will be the year that it goes down, but not so much. The community and the nation are experiencing challenging times, and that's led to increased fatigue, mental health crises that we're seeing more and more, and ideological divisions. Some examples from recent history of challenges that our library has faced are challenges to COVID safety protocols, a swatting attack, intellectual freedom challenges for materials, programs, displays, including our All Are Welcome mural, and the recent response to a potential room booking in September. There's always disruptions, and this often affects our day-to-day operations. We've even seen that in board meetings in the recent past. In the recent years, we've focused on increasing and altering our person in charge training to meet the changing needs of our community while keeping in mind our EDI principles. We've also focused much of our all staff training on serving patrons and their changing needs, identifying ways to approach challenging and even illegal behaviors like harassment, and employing mental health first aid. The staff time spent on safety and security continues to rise and impacts our ability to complete our other work. It takes my ability to think strategically about safety and security away and leaves me always in a responsive state. So by partnering with Jaffe Emergency Services, we have an opportunity to put together a strategic approach to safety and security, implement strong training protocols, streamline processes, and actually get to the technology upgrade projects that we've been trying to do for the last couple of years. And so I'm going to turn this over to some folks from Jaffe to talk about what they do and what they're proposing to do with our library. Today we have with us Chris Jaffe, who's the founder and CEO, Elizabeth Rupert, who's the safety consultant and would be working directly with our library on the project, and Colleen Sheets, the partnership specialist. So thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having us. It is great to spend this evening with y'all and to listen in and learn just a little bit more about what makes this community so special and so unique to you. And we're grateful to be kind of an extended, albeit becoming hopefully less extended, more connected part of this community. To give you a little bit of background, so it's Kelly shared, my name is Chris Jaffe, founder and CEO. And I started Jaffe with the idea, it was about 15 years ago, but with the idea that we could create a more prepared individual when emergencies happen. And more specifically, I used to respond to 911 calls, and when I would get there, too often I would find folks unaware, unwilling, or for some other reason not engaging in providing care for the person who is hurt. And I was frustrated, I was young, and I thought I could change the world. And so I set out to build this CPR and first aid training organization. And over the course of the last 15 years or so, we've grown from a single person doing this work to about 600 folks across 34 states in DC. And we do a whole lot more, of course, today than CPR and first aid training, but we're still focused on that very beginning part of an emergency taking place and trying to empower individual people, individual folks to be able to respond to those emergencies. And so as Kelly rattled off a handful of concerns that we've seen across schools, across event venues, across other organizations throughout the country, they feel very familiar to us because, quite frankly, they're the space that we live and breathe in. And I'll say, as both a safety leader, but also like an individual. I was a foster kid. I'm a Jewish adult trying to and sort of wrestling with that identity in the moments that we sit in. More locally, my grandmother's up the road. I think it's Waukegan in Deerfield. And so, feel very sort of connected to both the work and also the challenges that we're facing in the moments that we're standing in. Having said all of that, I'm not supposed to be talking. I'm really supposed to be handing it off to Colleen. So that's a little bit about who we are.
Thanks, Chris. Basically, if I could like summarize Chris's vision and mission, it's really to just make communities safer. And so that is our mission statement, and it just captures what we look to do so perfectly. My name, as you know, is Colleen Sheets. I'm the partnership specialist at Joffe. I joined Joffe in 2020, which is one heck of a time to have a career change. But I joined the Joffe team as a health coordinator leading an independent school in the Philadelphia area through COVID and developing the reopening plans, leading all health and safety initiatives, and then ultimately became essentially their director of health and safety. And so from there, I joined our partnership team. But even before that, I've been an EMT for 9 years in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. I'm still located in the Philly area. I was an 8th grade teacher at a charter school in Wilmington, Delaware, and I've just had all of these different roles that have kind of led me to this path, but all have that common kind of public safety theme in place. Liz, can I ask you to do a quick introduction on you?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Colleen. I'm Liz Rupert. I'm a safety consultant here at Joffe Emergency Services. I joined the team in January of 2023, and boy, has that time flown by in the most wonderful and exciting way. I have been in the field of emergency management, safety, security, and operations for over 15 years. I got started on this career path in the Navy, which means I was stationed there in Chicago. I lived in the area for just under 3 years. And, so shout out to Zion out there in Illinois. But once I got out of the Navy, I continued to do this work in various iterations throughout my professional career in different industries, just really trying to find my footing and my path and what a career in emergency management looked like for me. I also took what at the time I thought was a detour to teach middle school English in a small town in Oklahoma where my husband was from. And so between the Navy and middle school teaching, I feel like I'm indestructible. But it ended up not being a detour. It had tremendous relevancy for the work that I do now with Joffe and the work that I did previously as a safety professional inside school districts. And so that's just a little bit about me.
Perfect. Thanks, Liz. I have gotten to know Kelly a good bit over the past couple of months, and we keep coming back to this theme of we want our library to be a really safe space, but we don't want to keep anybody out. And so that's kind of really where our expertise leans in is we don't want to turn the library into Fort Knox. We want to keep it a warm and inviting and open place for folks and just want to help build that comprehensive and strategic safety plan that Kelly's been working on, help facilitate that person in charge training. And so we've talked and we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to kind of help, as you can see on our slide, we even put like need to catch it while it's spinning. And so we're proposing that Liz can really help lean in and guide this work, take that kind of heavy lift off of Kelly's plate so she can do one of the other million things that she does every single day, and not be so much in a kind of responsive crisis, the kind of mindset, and can just kind of focus on the larger plans.
As Chris kind of mentioned, we support organizations nationwide. We actually support over 2,000 schools across the country, in addition to a ton of other event venues, companies, organizations. And so just put a couple kind of pieces on here. We also support some places of worship and Angel Stadium. We've got a couple sporting venues, Cirque du Soleil, so quite the breadth of experience. And then one slide that I wanted to put in here, I hope I'm not giving anybody flashbacks from that COVID time. When we think about the Swiss cheese model, that I'm sure you've all are sick and tired of. But we've actually adopted it from that COVID mindset to what does safety look like? What are those different layers of safety in organizations in order to help make them as safe as possible? And so there's pieces like a board risk management committee. What are we doing? Are we practicing our drills and training? And what are our staff receiving? And so really wanted to kind of just highlight the holistic approach that our team takes. And then in our proposal, we're looking at a period of about from December to April, so about a year and a half, totaling about 140 hours of support between 4 different site visits, having Liz create and kind of facilitate this RFP and RFQ process for the larger security initiatives like those cameras and access management, but also kind of taking the reins and making sure emergency plans are up to date with best practices, leading and facilitating training for different staff and community members. And so this is kind of really the highlight piece of this slide, but we broke this into a couple of different phases. So kind of starting off with Liz kind of reviewing and just editing, codifying any plans that are already in place, doing a site walkthrough with some written feedback. It's one thing for us to kind of meet with Kelly and her team over Zoom. It's another to be in the library and really get to feel the community that you all have. So she'll also lead a lot of that RFQ work, help implement a new safety program, develop a risk analysis tool and decision making for the library leaders and staff and board members. Liz will continue to facilitate some training and really just help keep that program going. We've got a really great program in place. We do a lot of proactive and reactive work too. And so in addition to all of the support I laid out here, there's also access to, it's called Jaffe Academy. It's our online learning platform, has tons of really great kind of base level asynchronous training modules. And then we also have a 24/7 crisis hotline where organizations call us at around the clock to kind of talk through initial kind of moments during an emergency. Not a replacement for 911, but we're there as a thought partner as needed. And then just a little bit about our team. You've gotten to meet me, Chris, and Liz, but we have a ton of other folks behind the scenes that are excited about this opportunity and that are here to support Liz and the team. All right, I am going to pause here, but I'm wondering if there's any questions that we can help answer.
As always, I have a question. Hi, I'm Barbara.
Hi, Barbara.
How are you? Good presentation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
But what I don't understand is the practicalities. If you have a client or somebody visiting who becomes aggressive, are those the kinds of things you'll help us learn how to deal with? If we have people defacing or chewing gum and whatever, we have a lot of children. And how do you communicate the standards and the expectations so that you don't become policemen, but you're encouraging that kind of behavior?
That is a great question. Before I kind of give thoughts, I'm gonna let Chris or Liz jump in and take the first stab.
I think that we are all ears for those concerns. Barbara, it's nice to meet you. And Colleen does do a wonderful job of presenting. It's always a pleasure to watch her. I'm sure that Chris and I could go on all night long about our different approaches to all of those different situations. First of all, I would say that we are really committed in our practices, our trainings, our methodologies to meeting folks where they're at when we engage with them to support and promote healthy activities, because the goal is to build a community-wide safety culture, right? We want people to see the library as like I grew up spending an obsessive amount of time in the library as a kid. And, so we really want it to be a safe place, but it's also a place where they learn some of those community appropriate behaviors. And because they learn those things at the library, they take them back into their communities, into their homes, and become a little bit safer overall as that knowledge spreads. We have a large toolkit of different strategies. We plan to use what is already some of the language that's already been utilized in terms of staff training, connecting it with our best practices. I really could go on at length, but I want to keep this very high level. But needless to say, that's why we start with a really foundational and holistic understanding of the library system. That phase one piece is very important because a policy isn't meaningful if it doesn't work, and it doesn't work if it's not reflective of the environment. So those are all things that are very important, but happy to answer if you have more specifics questions, but sum it up.
Can we just describe what happened last month? And I would like to see how you guys could potentially help us.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So last month in September, we had a room booking, and there was a large feedback from the community. We received over 8,000 emails, hundreds of phone calls, some letters written in from various community members and members of groups that were opposed to the event happening. It was not a library-sponsored event. We had a lot of First Amendment concerns coming up because of that. We had a lot of pain in our community that the library would allow something like that to happen within their meeting room. And we also had a lot of security concerns around this based on what we were seeing written on social media and in some of the letters, and trying to balance access and the ability for all of the public in Northbrook who wanted to be able to use the library while an event like that was taking place as a private room booking was a real challenge. So that's kind of a high level overview of what we saw. The event ended up not happening, by the way.
Yeah. And I'll just add one additional thing is that while we have a very large Jewish population here in Northbrook, which I think you guys are aware of, we also saw a flood of comments from across the country coming in. So it wasn't just responding to our local community, but it was trying to respond to the local community while also navigating this huge influx from all over.
We see things like that, frankly, all too frequently. That one, sparked by a booking, others sparked by group of kindergarteners protesting around about something else, picked up on social media, reshared any number of folks. And what we typically find is that at some point a hate group begins to be the sort of sharer or the propagator of that information, whatever the information, whatever the post, whatever the kind of catalyst might be. And as that happens, then you all reference kind of the what we often see at the beginning, which is those calls and letters and kind of specific attacks. Often they'll say, don't do this, blocking it, those sorts of things. What it sounds like you didn't experience and I'm grateful for is some of the threats that then come in. We will blank the library, the people within it, the staff, etc. But I'll kind of answer the combination, right? And so our first step is we always focus in on the first few seconds. So number one, are we safe right now? And can we make sure that we get safe right now? Are there so many threats, concerns, items that are coming in that we need to change the posture of the library today in this moment? And that could be anything from activating like a lockdown in a really severe situation where maybe protesters were approaching the building, we felt that there might be some violence or attempted violence that were to take place. It could be just saying we're going to close the library if that were, if it were, again, right, an extraordinarily violent situation. So kind of analyzing those first moments to just focus first on physical safety of the people that are inside the library. That's guests. It's our staff, right? It's everybody. From there, we kind of run this process. And Barbara, to your question earlier, a little bit of our work is about de-escalation. And it's just kind of helping people take a step back, take a deep breath. We start most of our sessions, presentations, trainings, etc., with like a slow, deep breath. Let's all remember that both feet are still on the ground. We're safe in the space that we're in. And if we're not, we can leave together. And so we kind of work through that. And we do that in communication, in how we respond to individual letters, threats, demands, etc. We do it kind of in mass, slow dripping communication out that talks about kind of what is and what is not okay, what is and what is not part of our accepted values or shared values, etc. And then if necessary, we'll do it in person as well. A couple other things we tend to do during those kind of peak moments, we'll activate social media monitoring so that we're detecting any concerns before, as early as possible. That tends to be kind of our canary in the coal mine if folks are going to be approaching a building, a specific community member, an ED, those sorts of things. And that way we can kind of adjust our safety and security strategy for both the community, but then the individuals within it appropriately. So one example is we had a head of school that, in the case I mentioned earlier, kindergartners were protesting. It eventually, I think it was Ted Cruz, like reshared the tweet. It then went on to like a proper hate group, and so the head of school was receiving these really alarming messages and many threats of harm. And so for the first few days, it was relocating her to get her to a place where there was no negotiation she was going to be safe. But of course, as part of her leadership, she needed to return to school. And so it was then, okay, how do we kind of titrate back to some normal form, quite normal, but normal form of leadership, education, engagement. And so we'll kind of build those plans to return to some sense of normalcy. And along the way, often that's working with heightened security. It's often engaging with the local police department to have off-duty officers and staff. One of the challenges that comes up sometimes is we'll find that for whatever reason, the police department may or may not respond directly to an organization and say, yes, we'll give you off-duty officers or we'll give you, adequate resources. And sometimes just having an integrator in place. We speak both librarian and cop. And so sometimes we can just be translators and say, this is the situation we need you to respond to. And I should say, we're just learning to speak librarian, but I aspire to. But it's about kind of managing and resetting those between us and organizations. And so I think that's not very specific, I realize, in response to that question, but it's kind of step one is let's get safe and let's make sure that we are unsubjectively, purely safe and secure as individuals. And then we can kind of expand in concentric circles out to the rest of the staff, the rest of the community, the building itself, and kind of work our way forward. It had a booking like that gone through, right? Had there been a need to actually host it sounds like it was contentious, so likely protests and those sorts of things, and those would be the circumstances where we would bring in additional resources, coordinate and manage those folks as well.
I also want to add too, on top of everything that Chris said, that communication both internally and externally is really central to how we return to normalcy, right? So it can be there can be big emotions, there can be lots of little emotions, all those different spectrums of experiences. And so how we come back together as a community is through regular communication check-ins, balancing the privacy rights and the confidentiality concerns, and then also the need to communicate clearly with the members of the public, and then also empowering our staff to feel like they have a good understanding of what's going on without inciting unnecessary panic, and then just letting them know that we're there for them, and then following up with that debrief process. So I'm really big on communication, as Chris and Colleen are too, but just want to add that in there.
I have a question. I think it'll be quick. You mentioned 600 colleagues like spread throughout the country. Do you have kind of history in the Chicagoland area or in this North Shore area of Chicago with schools, or I think you might be working with other libraries concurrently, but do you have like a couple years of history in this area?
We do, yeah. So we have a handful of schools that we've supported pre-COVID, and then we actually very quickly during early days of COVID found ourselves supporting quite a few schools in and around the Chicagoland area. We have a longtime partner, the Jane Group, that probably is not a familiar name to folks in this room, but Jane was a crisis communicator for McDonald's a million years ago, and then has now built a crisis communication firm for schools. And so she actually brought us into Chicago about probably 10 years ago. And then we are working with some other libraries. Admittedly, we're new to working with libraries specifically. We work with venues and sort of small, both small and large. So everything from gosh, I'm trying to think of the smallest. Like an individual park is maybe the smallest example, and then we work with the Hollywood Bowl, and we work with folks. We actually did a little bit of consultative work around Lollapalooza, and so kind of huge gatherings as well. And so, having said that, one of our schools referred us to another library in the Chicago area, and that's how this all began. And so we're really excited to kind of expand our understanding to include these spaces as well.
And we connected with Jaffe, hoping to do some interlibrary cooperation and consulting with Highland Park and Glenview libraries. And that still is something that I think in the future could be something that takes off. I think there's also opportunity to work within our library system rails. And this year, I think Highland Park is looking to work with Jaffe. And so we're kind of trying to grow more opportunity for libraries to work with them, because one of the things I didn't mention in my intro is unlike any other security firm that I have looked at, I feel like Jaffe really understands the human-centered approach to addressing safety and security, and understands, I think because they've worked in schools where children are the main concern, that coming to an event, being concerned with all of the folks that are involved, being aware of all of the things that they're bringing in, all the trauma that they might be experiencing, and being aware of a lot of the EDI work that the library has been doing is something that is also one of their values. And so it feels very different than any other group that I have looked at as a potential partner for the library, and a much better fit.
I would also just add that, Kelly has had the opportunity to speak with Jaffe, as, Kelly mentioned, like over many months now. As I think all of you know, I regularly do training for new library directors, and both at the state and national level, the approach to security with libraries has been very much a punitive and very I don't want to say harsh, but hasn't been a human-centered approach. And this is something that regularly comes up, of like, people don't like that. They're looking for something different, but it isn't something that has been found. And so I have, shared that we've been in talks, and we're, hoping to work. And I do think that this is what library, like that core value piece is such an integral part, and everything that I've heard, both, you know, in my brief conversations I've had and in everything I've read and in hearing all the conversations with Kelly, it really is understanding how critically important the safety piece is, but also it's about understanding the whole human piece as well, and that it isn't, people are coming with so many different lived experiences that we can't possibly even hope to understand that walk in our doors every day, but there are things we can do. And that feels very hopeful to me, because I've been at a loss, and Kelly's done an amazing job getting us, I think, to where we are. I think the world is just spinning wildly faster than we can possibly keep up by ourselves, so.
I think I'm confused. I don't know what it looks like. Does it mean safety for the building, for the materials in the building, for the people that work in the building? I'm assuming that it does. But how does it work in empowering the people who work in the building so that they feel not necessarily secure, but in charge, that they are not reacting? I don't know, what does that look like? How does that happen? How does everybody speak the same language, using the same terms, and understanding that when I say security, we're talking about the same thing?
I love that question. I think it's
Short answer.
Short answer. Figured me out. In short, it's a combination of a few things. It's like a huge hug around the library is the way I would describe it from a safety and security perspective. So it means we're going to be looking at everything, engaging with everyone, and kind of available for kind of a wraparound approach. More specifically, though, as far as like the training and the empowerment, which is the part that really is the special part, it's about starting with with clarity on who's in charge, what happens when that person is not there, what happens when that backup person is not there, and working our way down a list so that no matter who's there, whether it's 12 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday or midnight and the phone is ringing from the alarm company, that the right people are paying attention and are taking the right actions. And then it's about going from there to say, okay, so we now know who's in charge, but then what are our degrees of emergency? Kind of what are our tools that every single person has in their toolkit? And that will include things like lockdown. If we need to activate a lockdown where we get people away from windows and into safe and secure spaces in the building, we have the ability to do that. It will include things like evacuation. If the building catches fire, right? One of the things we'll talk about is today, of course, our focus is safety and security work, kind of people-based, but reality is we get to practice and use these same skills for fires and tornadoes and other incidents that occur, which is sort of uplifting for me because it means we get to practice a whole lot more than just, you know, a person doing something that we didn't expect or that we wish they hadn't. And so it's about really making sure that everybody has the tools for the first 7 minutes on their own, and then that we as leaders have the tools to get them from 7 minutes to 7 hours beyond the emergency. From there, our team can swoop in and can help, others can help, right? There's lots of other resources, but we need to get to the 7th hour after the emergency occurs, no matter whether it's like popcorn in the microwave that caught fire or, you know, a big brawl that took place in the front entryway. We've got to kind of navigate those first 7 hours, and we'll work our way from seconds into minutes into hours to do it.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thanks for the overview.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's our pleasure. We're so happy to be here. Thanks for inviting us.
So this was something that we talked about having on next month, and then in light of everything that was happening, we thought it would be a good idea to move it up. So this was, I will say they had about 36 hours notice to like get their presentation, everything put together for what they thought was. And the board can choose, this is, as I said, something we were planning to bring next month. I think that you've heard from both Kelly and I that we do feel that this is really critical and important, and that there is a definite need there. However, we definitely want to make sure the board doesn't feel rushed into making any decisions. I think Kelly and I would love to know, are there additional things that the board would like to know that we can bring to talk about?
And I think that it certainly weighs on me, but I think it weighs on others who want more cohesive training, who want something that they can go back and refresh on. One of the things they didn't mention, but that they provide is asynchronous training modules. So when we onboard staff, everybody will be getting the same safety training, right? And they can refresh with those same modules. And so I will say, in terms of capacity, the ramp up also makes a lot of sense given some of the changes that we're seeing in staffing with facilities changing. There's a good opportunity to have facility staff be more involved in responding to incidents. With the changes that we're seeing in circulation and technical services, there's a lot of opportunity for doing training. And kicking something like this further down the road continues to keep safety and security separate and not as well integrated as one would hope it is in the organization. So even though there is capacity to bring something like this online, I think the timing of that makes sense right now.
Kelly and I
I'm sorry.
Kelly and I had a chance to connect about this. Time means nothing. Probably a week ago, maybe 3 years ago. I don't know.
How many emails ago?
I've stopped measuring time that way. Kelly and I had a chance to connect about this, and we talked specifically about the capacity issue and how it has felt since 2020, especially that everyone is so busy putting out fires that they don't have a chance to strategically plan for putting out the next fire. And this alleviates some of that and brings in people who are experts in that. Like Kelly gave me the example when we talked of reviewing an incident report and then also going to see if there's still blood on the stairs, and like managing every single piece of the process and not having time to make the actual plan for how we prevent emergencies or address emergencies proactively. And the timing for me also feels right, given the state of the world and what our community has experienced recently. It's important to me that patrons feel comfortable coming to the library. I know it's important to all of us. It's important to me that the staff feel comfortable in their workspace. And I think this addresses a lot of what we've heard from the community and from the staff of wanting more structure, wanting more resources, and wanting to know what the plans are.
One question I had is, this is a time-limited contract. One of the things that they talked about was their ability to, correct me if I'm wrong here, be on call, should there be. This ends April 30th, 2026. Is there any
plan for extension?
What happens after that?
Yeah, that's a great.
Yeah.
So I was speaking with the executive director at Rails, who was very, as you can imagine, received a lot of questions while I was at the ILA conference about what has been going on here for the past month. And I was speaking to her about how many other library directors I was talking to that had similar challenges and the need for both a system and a statewide effort. I also had the opportunity to chat with
the executive director of the state library and the secretary of state when I was at the conference last week about safety in libraries and the need for there to be more robust support. I think having us as a leader in libraries be able to kind of take and, learn and, use this, but then having something like the library system or the state library offer something. We have similar things for like Open Meetings Act and FOIA questions, that there's a hotline that can be called, that I feel like this is something absolutely that the systems and state can take on. And there certainly was a lot of interest in that in talking with those people. So I would see this as something that much like was done with HR Source, which is another company that we work with, where the system also offers support, and they don't necessarily offer everything 100% free. It might be depending on your budget, but this is something that it isn't just about us. It is about so many libraries. When you think about the number of people walking into libraries just in Illinois every day, and the potential of what could go wrong, it's amazing that but this is something that we absolutely have a pressing need right now. But this is something that goes so far beyond us. So I've definitely been taking steps, and I know Kelly's been talking with a lot of other people at libraries. So my approach would be that we work with them, but that we also simultaneously be working to get something either with Jaffe or someone else implemented at either a system or statewide level, because the need is certainly there. So do I have 100% certainty that I can make that happen? No, of course not. But do I feel that it is something that we absolutely need to pursue, and that I feel like there is a huge need, and I think that the outcry will be enough that something will be able to be done? I do.
I agree with you. I mean, as I look at this, and we need our staff to feel safe. We need everybody to feel safe. I think, what I find somewhat depressing is the notion of every little library having to hire its own security experts. It just seems
daunting.
And how fortunate are we that we live in a community that offers such amazing financial support to its library that we're even able to consider this.
Yes, but I do think that this is something that's bigger than us and system-wide, and it would be very nice if each library didn't have to come up with its own little sort of...
And that there was some consistency. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very impressed with their presentation, and I like their approach. It doesn't strike me as something that is a good fit for us, though. It seems, I don't like the idea of us being their first or even their sort of second library that they've worked with, because it is a different thing. And it seems that for emergency situations, we should be, like, we've got the police department for things that happen, like, immediately. For things that are planned out, I'm not sure, like when we talk about having an event where we think there's going to be a lot of public coming, either from Northbrook or from elsewhere. I don't know. I don't get the sense that this is the organization that would be suited for that, for public gatherings and information. So I don't mean to diminish the need for a security and that sort of support. I think the other thing we need that I didn't hear a lot about, maybe they do this, is, sort of de-escalation training. I think that seems like something.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's something they do. They didn't really talk about.
It does say it here. Yeah.
They said they do it.
So it just, it seems like they've got, I don't know, it didn't seem to me to really mesh, but I haven't looked at other proposals or anything like that. I was very impressed with them, but again, they didn't seem like a great fit for the library.
Kelly, were there other proposals, or is this?
No, we didn't do an RFP process for this. They would be coming on as a consultant and the expert, so we didn't need to do an RFP.
And the other thing was that the way that this kind of came about was that the Highland Park School District did a joint initiative where they hired a security director and worked with Jaffe And then Highland Park approached us and said, hey, would you guys be interested in doing some type of, I'd been talking with all the area directors about safety and security, you know, and so we started talking, and there was, you know, a number of libraries. It ended up being us, Highland Park, and Glenview that started talking more seriously. And then Highland Park had to kind of pause stuff because of their building project. And that is where it kind of came about because of that, and didn't come from us. We like the idea of doing more of a group thing to share costs, and also to recognize that our communities are very near each other and there's a lot of overlap in people using, so to have more of that consistency.
Is this a shared?
It is
There was
not.
one thing that talked about the site visits.
They're working with Highland Park.
Yeah.
And if they are able to combine their travel to work on site with us and on site with them, there would be a lower cost for travel.
Go ahead.
I agree with Maura. I thought that I couldn't figure out some of his long answers, which is why I asked him to be short. It felt like a package again, like when we went through with all the consultants for EDI and all of that. It like BlackBerry. It feels like it's not personal. Yes, we're similar to Highland Park, but we're not Highland Park. It just didn't feel. It felt like they have a plan, and this is step one, and this is step two. But do you know what we need or how we need to react? It just felt canned again to me. It didn't feel. I couldn't get my hands on. Lovely to say it's a big hug, but what are the hands doing? I didn't come away. I firmly believe that we need to make a commitment to this whole area. No question. I think it's a priority number one, but I'm not sure about these people.
Sorry. I just, because I wanted to follow along that thought. I also I so strongly believe in the whole security, and I think this whole thing is like, I agree with this idea, but I feel like it's only addressing 10 or 20% of what we need. And also kind of, this is just personally speaking, I'm like, can we just think philosophically, is this actually make us safer, or does it make us feel safer? I mean, if I'm a library employee, like, I'd like to know, have a stronger relationship with the police department. I don't want Barbara to be better trained so that we can deal with this for 7 hours together. I'm not sure that's gonna make me feel safer. Like, is it just like us as the leaders wanting that so desperately that this is the step we take, or this is actually addressing? I'm sorry, I just feel like I might be a little bit more like short term or nearsighted, but I feel like we probably need more or better lawyers, more communication crisis specialists, and perhaps more counseling for our staff, like people that are professionals in these areas that are kind of, when we need them, the next booking, they're gonna step up like immediately. That's just kind of where my head is.
I would agree. And I think that what seemed to be lacking, and that is so important to this discussion, and I know that not every discussion is what we just recently went through, but just balancing the security with free speech and access. That is what we have to always keep in mind. And I didn't hear any of that really from them, which isn't to say they couldn't address that. They seem, capable. But again, it seems like too much and too spread out. And I think what we need is less medical training, not emergency training, because we're in a location where we have access to that. What we need is probably crisis management and de-escalation, and then also things that are just specific to the security of, protests and free speech. That's, unless I'm missing some other needs. I don't.
And the technology piece, getting our technology up to speed.
Piece is critical. Question I have is, given that there's challenging patrons coming in the door, will going through some more hours of training solve that problem or help?
What is when we say technology aspect, what do we mean by that?
To get the RFP written to upgrade our security cameras, our
Okay.
access service.
Okay.
Yeah, and which we've tried a couple times to get a consultant in the area to come and work with us on, and we've gotten no responses. Or we've gotten responses that are, well, we can just bid it. And we're like, okay, but we need someone to actually help us figure out what we need.
That part is key.
That
I would
does
say
sound
we
key.
absolutely do need somebody who knows what they're doing to do that piece of
And
it.
someone to take away the safety piece from Kelly, that should not be her job.
Yeah.
Like someone with the expertise to deal with this piece of it's almost like a job function that Kelly shouldn't be doing.
The benefit is of Jaffe, or if we need to look at someone else, I want them to zoom out. I want Kelly and Kate to be the experts on First Amendment and free speech. I don't expect them to. And I realize this comes from the vantage point of having sat in meetings with the crisis communication firm who doesn't know what Kate's job and what Kelly, like I have listened to this leadership team explain in granular detail things about the First Amendment and like things you wouldn't believe that you have to explain to another human being, and they do it with such patience. And so I think as we have this conversation, we can't expect Jaffe to be everything. That's not what they're experts at. And training is a piece of what they do, but it's not all of what they do. They're also offering for pay, of course. I don't want to make them, whatever. To look at our existing protocols for things like room bookings and for protests and free speech and say, this is what's working and what's not. Even the part about being a translator between librarians and other
that spoke to me.
It is, it's not a secret that we have had challenges as a local entity of government communicating with other local entities of government. And if there's someone who can help facilitate that conversation about emergencies and priorities, and again, I like Jaffe. I don't know if they're right. I haven't seen anyone else, but like that to me says the bigger picture is what we want them to do. I'm less in the weeds about what this like asynchronous training is, because I do think our staff has really good training for the most part and knows what to do to de-escalate. But also the bigger picture of what Jaffe can bring or another group feels important at this point.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because the way you articulate it, if that is what I was seeing here and I heard.
Or if that's what they said, that would have made a difference.
Oh, yes, of course. The idea of the translation.
You're hired.
Yeah. They did say that part. But when you say, step back and say, listen, we have great expertise in protests or in, angry patrons, and this is what works, and this is what, that, yes, I can see that expertise we need. What I was trying to read through here, what I took away was like some training and some procedures.
I also want to be fair to them that not only did they only have 36 hours to prepare for this, and I promise I am not advocating for them. I don't know them. We also put them on the spot with what's basically a case study of something we all lived through in a very heightened state of emotion. Like my nervous system is fried and probably will be for years because of what's happened. Mm-hmm. So to have a 5-minute quick overview of that is hard for anyone to answer, right? Like, and I don't.
True. But I thought that's what consultants are trained to do. Like case studies. Like I did a ton of them preparing for job interviews.
Well, based on the conversation, I wonder if we should put together a list of additional questions for them.
Sure, that's fair.
Them to the
Very much. Like,
for
I
sure.
would love to know, like we had the swatting attacks last year. Seems like forever ago. I mean, that was another thing that feels like forever ago, but also was pretty traumatic. I clearly shouldn't go on vacation because a lot of stuff seems to happen either during or right after I come back. That I think we have a lot of examples. We have
so many examples
of different traumas we've experienced in the last 2 years.
I'd like to know how they would work with potentially outsourcing facilities. Like, if the facilities are no longer entirely run by us, how do they collaborate with someone? Like, I think there's just a lot of opportunities
I would love
to get
know,
more information.
What happened in September? We pick up the phone and say, we've got some social media, posts that are worrisome to us. We've got folks saying they're going to try to fill the building, and then the fire marshal had. What should we do right now?
I think again, this is a legal and a police issue.
Yes, I don't know. It's a little bit like we're looking this is gonna, like, as a person, it's gonna make us stronger, physically fitter, but I don't know, I feel like I need an actual doctor when I'm actually sick. To me, that's like the difference. If I think of the past couple of crises we've dealt with, I have a hard time to understand how practically they can help us.
I just, you guys want to see kind of like,
yes, like
if
how,
you could observe in action and see what actually
yes, or
is
or a
being
case that they
done.
actually did,
Yeah.
like
What you did,
show what,
yeah. I
show
think,
what success looks like to you.
Because, I'm sorry, Maura, please.
So like if we want to move off of September, we can, but I don't see how they would have been that helpful during September. They don't know the community that we're in. They don't have a relationship with our village hall and our police department. Not that that was seamless by any means, but they don't have that relationship. And it was so unique to libraries, you know, that they talk about, you know, he talked about a hate group, and he was just making a reference to a hate group. And I think that sort of like labeling something a hate group is sort of exactly sort of, it's one of the, it sort of runs counter to sort of the issue that we had, I guess. It's sort of that you,
to be fair, we didn't give them
no, we
exact
didn't.
context, but at the same time, yeah, but it was like, he was not hitting what I'm looking
I don't
for
feel
at
like
all.
they would have been
No.
that helpful. I don't know if the staff would have felt more comfortable having trained with them. That I can't answer. But I feel like there's other people you could bring in that would be, you know, sort of to do specific things, whereas like
They know what to do.
They're going to do like A through Z. We need someone to do like A, D, and maybe L, you know?
Capsules.
Yeah,
Conflict resolution. Bring in people who are experts in conflict resolution.
Communicate to the,
Exactly.
to the
If we
communication specialist. I don't know what's called.
Exactly. Or if we need somebody for emergency medical, bring in whatever. I think that they're not experts in everything. If I'm worried about a patron coming in and being aggressive or whatever, I need to have training in conflict resolution. What am I going to say? How am I going to diffuse the situation? I
think they do that.
They sounds like
That's what
that's
do.
part
They
of
do.
they would.
Yeah, the question
But
I
don't
have.
other groups do it that where it's not you're not doing like we need more a la carte, I guess is what I'm saying.
Exactly.
And we need to first list our needs versus trying to figure out what they do. I agree with that. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not very impressed with the package approach.
I suspect that Kelly actually can define our needs fairly well.
Yeah.
On this, and I think if we're not wildly enthusiastic about this as it's written, I do not want to put off dealing with this issue at all. So we would need to.
So is
know
this
what we want to do.
a la carte approach completely impractical?
I can't think of anywhere that I could reach out to do that.
I would argue that that is what we have been doing with Kelly leading our safety training and reaching out to individual and bringing someone in to do this training and that is what we have been
So
doing.
Kate, do you really think training is the first step to resolve the safety issue?
No, I think
or
the
like
first step is for them to come in, and they've already spent a number of hours talking with Kelly, and looking at everything we have in place and having a deep understanding of our system, and then talking about what do you already have in place? How can we tweak that? And then how can we make sure it's being applied consistently? Which, as Kelly pointed out, is something that is very difficult for us to do with everything else that seems to keep popping up. During the pandemic, Kelly had a really great but also horrific analogy that it was like, it feels like we have all these fires popping up and we don't get to put any of them out. All it seems like we're doing is getting them tamped down enough before the next one is about to rage wildly out of control.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, surely after COVID, that is it's gonna be so much easier.
It's gonna be great.
It has immediately launched into First Amendment audits,
Yeah.
swatting attacks, book challenges, it never seems to end. And I mean, I know that I am like, I've had to learn a tremendous amount and I love learning stuff, but we also just like we do need the help, and Kelly has done an amazing job,
but it's
cobbling and putting everything together. But we
But
need
they-
the consistency.
Excuse me for interrupting. They did a disservice. You put so much time and energy in it, and I trust you so completely. They did a disservice because we're walking away saying, why? I think they need another chance with more direct questions or specific. I came away, all I came away with is a hug and kindergartners protesting. I don't know what any of that did. And
I'm wondering, now that you already know this, I mean, what would a secure and safe library look like to you? What, you know, and you don't have to answer that right now. That's not, I'm not asking for an answer right now, but you know, you begin with the end in mind, right? So if you had a vision, or you know, if what would the safe and secure library look like to you, to you, and then you think, how do we, you know, how do we get there, and what do we need to get there? And maybe it's this, maybe, and at a minimum might help us ask questions, because now we understand like what's our end game there, what, you know, what's your vision, you know.
I keep coming back to Jamie's comment though on making sure it's not just a perception.
Yes,
Safety.
that's why I'm asking what would,
and it isn't what it would look like. What would it be?
Yeah,
because
like it's just a
if it can look safe, you can have a security guard.
Right. I don't
standing
mean
out
literally
there.
look.
Right.
You know, I mean,
We're not going to do any digging ponds.
yeah. We said, you know, this library is, you know, is safe and secure because.
Can I also ask, and you guys work in schools, I know we're different, but how do they deal with it? Like, they actually have to deal with like school shootings as a possibility.
Yesterday, I
Do
was,
they have
I was leading my 9 and 10-year-olds through a lockdown. So this is
So
very.
they have like
relevant
occasional
time.
training, and then do they have a security
Well,
officer?
see, one difference between school districts and libraries is that nobody can
Get in the building, because they have
But
security, you have to,
you
yeah.
can't get in, you're buzzed in through several
That's right,
doors.
yeah.
They have to run your ID, you do not get to wander the halls. It's just a very different environment than a library. And
That's
it's a
true.
List of everyone that's in the building.
That's correct.
That's
You
true.
know if it's clear.
Absolutely locked down, and even so, as we all know,
Somebody wants to get
and, but it's just a different
Yep.
a different world.
Makes sense.
And we have panic buttons, and I think you do
Yeah.
too. And we have, you know, drills, and you know, the students, and all of those things. But I guess it's not a whole answer. But if you could create that, like, what is it? What is it? And then we can figure out, okay, what do we? That's what we need. That's what we want. What is it we need to get there? And what, you know, what sorts of things? Is it training? Is it, you know, new procedures? Is it somebody who is on call who can deal with I don't know, actually, but it helps sometimes to start with, again, begin with the end in mind.
Can I make a suggestion as well? First, I'm really impressed with the discourse on this topic. Everyone, I know this area pretty well too. That Swiss cheese slide that they showed is a good way to sort of think about it. In fairness to them, you gave them 36 hours.
Yeah.
Someone needs to perform a diagnostic on what's necessary. And I love hearing, how do we break down what is necessary? But if you look at that Swiss cheese, you almost think about, here are the key areas. Where can they provide guidance? Because you do need a consultant, it sounds like you said, you know, Kelly's doing a great job, but you need someone to help sort of think it through. But then you don't want them to get too broad and get into not knowing the solution or the security system yet. And I get it that they haven't been here and done their tour, but what are you going to accomplish in 3 days that someone else couldn't do? And then you have to think about, they're solving the training stuff. So there's such a broad basket with what we see right now. And we probably collectively have to narrow that down a little bit into the phases I think we have a general idea. We do need to do something. I liked what Barbara said right from the beginning is, we can't wait anymore. So everyone's saying some really important things here. At the same time, there's just a general level of discomfort, at least with the broadness of what was provided right now.
And so what I'm hearing the board asking for is kind of having an opportunity to ask some more specific questions, which I think we can put together some ideas and then also ask the board for some questions, and then also better defining kind of our vision of what a safe library looks like. And then I think also looking at the plan and saying like it has 4 different phases, and certainly that initial assessment, like we could decide, and this kind of gets to your a la carte thing, like we could say, you know what, we're comfortable with phases 1 and 2 right now, which will get us through the end of this fiscal year. We want to do that, which will help us see, like, what are you showing us to see, do we want to continue engaging? We don't, everything is like, all of this is possible to be, adjusted. And that might give us some, like, we know there's a need right now. I think we hear the board in saying, like, we don't know that these are the right people, but we also recognize there's a need. So I think that there's an opportunity where, do we take a scaled down approach? I'm not suggesting we decide anything today, but maybe that's something that we, look at that and say, let's start with the first couple and then see. And then meanwhile, maybe we're also looking and saying, here are some other places that can help us with this. I'm an external processor, so I'm talking as I'm thinking, or thinking as I'm talking. So that's kind of where I'm seeing where it's like, let's look at like other possibilities within the Jaffe plan, and then also what it might mean if we did a larger review of things and what that timeline might look like. Let's look at questions, and then let's also, have Kelly and I better define what we're talking about. Does that sound like?
To me, it does, because when we talk about asking more pointed questions, this is why I brought up what should a safe library look like. I want my questions to be guided by your vision.
Yeah.
I don't want to just be
For sure.
randomly thinking up my own questions that don't have anything connected to what when you say this is how I want it to be. I would look at that and say, all right, that's our goal. Here's the questions I would have to see if they could help you get where you want. So I want to build any questions off of your vision.
And your priorities.
And your priorities.
I mean, is there something
The
that,
technology is what I'm hearing is sort of one of the main
and then,
that's where we start. And it seems like if they're not actually, they seem like they're going to be an extra entity in that technology piece. They're not actually going to be the
Contractor?
the contractor,
Correct,
the vendor.
right, because we have to go out to formal bid.
Right,
Now,
so
there's
that
a-
seems
yeah.
like maybe we reach out to them and sort of find out if we can kind of do that step first and not include a security
So
consultant.
you say bring that part out of it, and then
Yeah, if
look
that's
at
the
the
one
other.
that's the most immediate
Although a
time
security
frame.
consultant, that's one of the things I really think they could add to the table in terms of technology and,
If they can
But
do
is
the
it
vendor
redundant?
selection.
I'm saying, is it redundant? If you're gonna go out to,
but you're saying
we
you
need to
couldn't
know
yeah.
what to ask for in the bid.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's the thing. You need somebody
And
who's
we have tried doing it ourselves. We've tried working with, we've tried now for 4.5 years to figure out a way to do this.
what do other libraries do for this?
So, of the 609 public libraries in the state of Illinois, only 50 have budgets over $5 million. There's probably only about 10 to 15 libraries that are our size. Of those, half of them are city libraries. And so that means that the cities are dictating and have a chief technology officer and procurement office. So we're looking at under 10 libraries in the state, And most of them have done massive new building projects in the last 20 years where this was included as part of that. That was a very long answer
No,
of
we're
saying,
retroing. I
there's no
understand
corners.
yeah, I
So,
understand
like-
what you're saying. This is one area where we really
We
do
don't-
need
yeah.
security experts to come in and tell us, what do we need?
right.
By the way, how much is it? I'm sorry, someone
It's
asked.
$44,000 for the entire engagement. It's broken up into kind of both fiscal years. So the first year would be $12,330, which would be charged to this fiscal year, which ends April 30th, and the remaining $32,055 would go into fiscal year 2026.
I'm sorry, I sounded very negative today, but I just want to say
It's realistic.
the page that they put down the time span with the thing with 160 hours, I did not like that. Like, they haven't even met us. They don't even know what we need. It just sounded like they have 160 hours of product they can give us. I do not like that approach. If they are willing to work with us, they have to come the other way around. It has to customize for us. They don't know how many hours that is. Like, I do not like that approach at all, period. And I think they have expertise that we should leverage and work with, but they've got to make that success story very clear to me. It's just like they have this product and they're trying to, but they need to listen to us before, like, I don't know. I do not like that approach of consulting. I like a little more, yeah.
So it might be helpful, and I don't think we need to do this today, but Kelly has spent hours and hours
So maybe that is already
with them.
included.
So that
Okay.
was included. I think that message was not clear.
Okay.
So I
It's a
think
terrible presentation.
I think that you're seeing it as
No, but they
this
didn't
is-
come in. They come in saying a bunch about themselves. They didn't say anything about what they learned about from Kelly. That would have spoke to me so much more. Like, I know this is the challenges you're making with. Let me tell you why I can make a difference. That's like, I'm not a salesperson, but that's like how I would.
It was that it's not necessarily anything to say about their skill set or anything. It's
Correct.
More about
Presentation skills.
Look, we know that in the past year you've had this many difficult patrons, and we talked to Kelly about or just
List two of the challenges that Kelly listed.
Generic, I think.
Very generic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it also, we normally would have given you guys a lot more background and time to also digest it. And I think, I think that's something that kind of speaks to Janet's, like, what is our vision? And I think that this was a really good opportunity to kind of lay the problem out there. And I do think, like Stacy said, this is the time. Like, there is a lot going on, and this is really a need. And I think that next month we can come back and bring some of this and talk more about this. I think we all recognize that it is a priority, and so I think it is, as with many things, an opportunity for us to bring more information, which that we love doing. So
I'm sure.
Kelly, could you prioritize as one of the things to come back with? If we were to have to do one thing as soon as possible with expertise addressing that particular issue, what would it be? And you pretty much pointed out technology. So,
Well, I actually would say the priority is coordinating crisis response would be the priority for me tonight. If you had asked me this in August, I would have said the technology.
but I think that would really helpful.
You can,
to
yeah,
know.
listen.
What a crisis consultant that you
Yeah,
met with.
Jascula.
just go
JT,
determine
yeah.
who is a strategic communication firm
They are
that
the strategic.
correct.
communication
They work
firm
a
in
lot
Chicago.
with the American Library Association, and so
And
they
everybody else. They are
Yes.
sort of the premier crisis communications firm in the city.
Okay.
So
And do they do that sort of thing?
no
not
not
the
security.
security
Not the
piece. I did
security.
see
Okay.
there was like, sort of come up with templates. I'm like, well, that's a thing they could, maybe work on, but they're not a security firm in
They don't have the
Okay.
security
More,
expertise.
crisis
No.
communication.
No.
It's like,
No,
what
yeah.
Get
messages
it,
are
yeah.
we writing and what are we putting on social media? And
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
So who would know? Somebody to recommend.
So colleges and universities. To Jamie's point, school districts are locked down. Colleges and universities are open campuses. Almost all of them are using consultants locally to figure out their technology, their security. So I think you could call Northwestern, Lake Forest College, College of Lake County, and get recommendations of who they work with, if that's the route you wanted to go, to find out who consults for them on security.
By that we mean technologies.
They would do everything, security plan down, training RAs all the way through, comprehensive emergency
They'd
response.
help you even write the bid.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what Joffrey would do as well with this. So
I mean, I really liked all of those individuals, so I wish I'd liked their presentation more, but it just, I don't feel like it was a good fit as much as I liked them personally.
But I think that's a great idea. This, in addition to the sort of vision, there's the, if I could do one thing right now, it would be.
Yeah.
And I think that would
go back to 2019.
No.
That is impossible. Okay.
We'd all be younger.
I know, right?
Most of us
It's
wouldn't be
important
on
for you.
Doing
Oh,
that,
yeah, no, that was
let's go
good.
back to like 15.
I we're just making the point, it's important for Kelly to know that we hear you and that it's not something taken lightly, nor does it reflect anything about this group. It has to do with what's the best and most efficient, most cost-effective way to get what you need as quickly as possible. So I think you need to know that you were heard.
Thank you.
Yes, and I kind of apologize because really the past, like the swatting as well as the past thing, like really strike like heavily on me. But it's like I'm just observing this as a board member. Like I care about what you and Kate and everyone, like what safety means to you guys. Like it's like I don't work here, and like for you guys to articulate that, I hope you guys all know that we're like 100% behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I see and what I've heard tonight is you guys doing what the community elected you to do, which is to prioritize what the library, what the community needs, and to ask good questions and to we don't ever want anyone on the board to just rubber stamp anything. We want you asking these questions. I thought this was incredibly helpful. And, is life easier if everyone just agreed with everything I say? Sure. But that would also be incredibly boring. We'll just leave that up to my husband to do. And so this is absolutely something that we fully recognize the board is very much behind us on. And you guys have asked some really great questions that we can get answers to and come back and talk about. I think it is important for us all to keep it front of mind, which as we know is challenging because there's a lot going on. But this is the type of thing that we recognize we need to be looking at. And Becky is getting sick of hearing me say this. Anna's been sick of me saying it for years. Never any apologies for, please don't ever. You're doing the job that you are not paid for, but have volunteered for. And I really appreciate that because that to me is what makes a strong board is the ability to question and ask those really important, good questions and to not just be like, okay, well, this is a thing. Let's just do it. Let's make sure we're making thoughtful decisions. So thank you all. This was great.
Thank you.
And we still have one more item.
Yeah.
Sure do.
And we get to go into closed session.
Yep.
Okay.
And there's so much more fun.
Yeah, that's a word for it. Can I get a motion to go into closed session pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2 C8, security procedures, school building safety and security, and the use of personnel and equipment to respond to an actual, a threatened, or a reasonably potential danger to the safety of employees, students, staff, the public, or public? What it says.
Public.
It says public twice.
Oh, just one public.
Just Maura seconded. Okay, everybody motioned. Jennifer, can I get a roll call vote?
Ms. Christian?
Yes.
Ms. Oliver?
Yes.
Mr. Patel?
Yes.
Ms. Becker Bishop?
Yes.
Ms. Unical?
Yes.
Ms. Shu?
Yes.
Great, and we are back in open session. Up next, we have agenda building. So in November, we will be discussing an update on the payroll and FEIN change, discussion of the Joffy security proposal, quarterly strategic plan report. We will approve the per capita grid application, review the closed session minutes for the previous 6 months.
Woohoo!
Wow. And we will get a demonstration of the new Civic Room AV equipment, which is also a reminder to say goodbye to the table on your way out tonight. Is there anything that anyone else would like to add to next month's agenda?
So where would the meeting be?
It'll be right here.
Oh, it's just a different, okay, I see, I see.
And a different AV setup.
Oh, wow.
Okay. With that, we will adjourn at 10:53 p.m. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're great. What a fun meeting.